Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Cima SES E3 Essentials Revision segment number 2. This is going to be in one part, and this is the segment on environmental analysis. As far as the understanding is concerned, it's easy. Application is concerned, it's interesting. Let's have a look. But before we dive into the content, I would like to warmly remind you what you must do. Please have a notebook and pen on the ready. Follow the slides and my explanations very carefully. Make notes as you deem necessary. Maintain a list of key topics that you feel you're weak at so you can self-revise later. And please maintain a list of key performance and management tools that can help model answers in the SES. In fact, in this segment, you will learn so many performance and management tools that you can use in the strategic case study, and that we will be actively using in our pre-scene analysis or the strategic analysis as well. On that note, internal environment first, right? So I will ideally be looking at two aspects of the environment, the internal environment and the external environment. So this is going to be the first we are going to look at the internal environmental analysis aspect. So obviously we have to try and understand the resources side to things. Now we did look at the resources audit from the internal analysis initiation, but we are going to learn a different perspective to resources, or auditing your resources, or having an understanding of your resources. Then the competences, which was something that we looked at, but ideally these are things that we need to be doing well to succeed. The critical success factors aspect, and how exactly do we, what exactly is the leading route to critical success factors is what we will look at. And in addition to this, we will also think about the Porter's value chain. Let's take a look. Firstly, the resource audit. Now in this segment, we are going to look at the EMS model. This model suggests, now when you see this, you'll realize how simple it is. This model suggests that the items in a position audit can be categorized into factors beginning with M. So factors like manpower, the human assets of the firm, their skills and morale; money, the company's cash position, gearing, investment plans, short and long-term finance, etc. Then you've got management, the quality, expertise and experience of the top team. Is the firm well managed, and do they have the skills and vision needed to progress? Then you have machinery, the physical assets of the business, their flexibility, relative costs and the quality. Then you have markets, the products and the markets the company currently operates in, the quality and the position of the products themselves. Then you have material, the relationship between the company and its suppliers, cost, quality and future availability. Methods, like the processes adopted by the business, outsourcing, JIT, AI, big data, cloud, etc. Then you have management information, quality and timeliness of information provided to managers. Could include big data, will impact the quality of decisions made, and the makeup of the culture and the structure of the organization, even branding and other intangibles. So the EMS model basically proposes that the resources of an organization can be classified into words beginning with M, such as manpower, money, management, machinery, markets, materials, methods, management information and makeup. Okay, so this is one perspective. Basically this is like a word play. If you remember some of these M's, you're basically remembering some of the aspects of analyzing the resources that are at your disposal. On that note, let's take a look at this idea of how goals, because we looked at the mission and the vision in segment number 1, but you have to translate into practical goals. But goals, the achievement of goals is not just done that simply. It's not that straightforward. So this diagram is a good depiction of how goals and objectives ultimately should be translated to measures that will be the driving factors of your achievement. So for example, in the Cima strategic case study, your goal or the objective is passing the case study, and the measure that is associated is the score that you're getting. So between the goals and objectives and the measures, there are so many aspects that we need to think about that translate your idea, your expectation into something quantifiably measurable. So goals and objectives lead to identification of critical success factors, and to measure or to understand if you or how to achieve critical success factors, you use KPIs, key performance indicators, and these KPIs can be quantitative or qualitative, but either way they should be measurable. You should be able to measure in some way or form, and the tools that are available for you to measure KPIs, to quantify KPIs, are the metrics and the measures that are used. Technology has been a significant enabler, significant contributor to enabling measures and metrics. So KPIs are driven by business goals, but KPIs are constructed from measures. Say for example, you can have an objective like ensuring that every single customer of your business is happy. These are good, not an objective. Objective has to be smart. So it could be a goal, right? 100% customer satisfaction. But the issue is the KPI could be customer satisfaction, right? But what is the measure? Customer satisfaction itself, quantifying it can be a challenging task, and therefore you need measures. You need some way to quantify the whole thing. And on that note, we can move to the idea of value creation and how the Porter's value chain can be a useful tool. So Porter's value chain, as you know, identifies 5 primary activities and 4 support activities. And what Porter is trying to tell us is that looking at your business, analyzing your business into these sets of activities can in turn lead you to identifying how to extract value from each of the activities. So what are the primary activities? Inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing and sales, and service. And the secondary activities are firm infrastructure, human resource management, technology development, and procurement. So just a few examples under primary activities. Real-time inbound inventory data, location of distribution facilities, trucks, material handling and warehouses are all elements within inbound logistics. And if you identify how you can maximize value, improve value under each of this, there you go, you are looking at ways to improve value creation. Another example, say for example under marketing and sales, some elements that are relevant are pricing, communication, promotion, products based on community needs, and even going for low prices, right? Or any pricing strategy that you deem to be value adding for your business, like strategies like price skimming, right? Cost leadership. These kind of strategies can fall under marketing and sales, one of the primary activities that Porter identifies. Secondary, obviously under infrastructure, just an example, management, finance, legal, planning, etc. would fall under maintaining a firm infrastructure of your business. And that is, while not unimportant, even though it is said to be secondary or support, it is highly critical and highly important. And so long as you effectively execute these groups of primary and support activities, you can expand your margin, right? Ideally the profit margin of your business internally as well. And that is a quick depiction of Porter's value chain. This leads, so Porter's value chain is quite basic, right? It's something that we have looked at continuously. Whatever qualification that you have come from, I know I'm 200% sure that Porter's value chain is something you have learned. But here I also want to take your attention to this idea of value system. Now the value chain itself can be used to give managers a deeper understanding of precisely what their organization does. It can identify, or it can help us identify the key processes within the business that adds value to the end customer. Strategies can be then created to enhance and protect these. And the value chain can help us identify the processes that do not add value to the customer. These could then be eliminated, saving the organization time and money. So you capitalize further on value enhancing activities, you eliminate or reduce the effect of value demeaning or value destroying activities. That is how you create value. Now, the value system looks at linking the value chains of those in the wider organizational ecosystem, that is your downstream and upstream, your supply and the customer side, to that of the organization. So ideally, when you combine your downstream, when you combine the supply, the value chains of your suppliers in the upstream side and the value chain of your distributor in the downstream side, if you're a manufacturing organization or someone who has a distributor as an intermediary or a retailer, you are looking at this sort of a diagram where so many value chains are connected, and if these elements within the ecosystem can work together, if you can work with your supplier, if you can work with your customer, right, it could be a B2B customer, it could be a distributor, and identify and combine the value chain, right, ideally creating the supply chain itself. And when it's well connected, when you have a thorough understanding of your primary activities, their secondary activities, and you discuss and you figure out how to improve value, you figure out what are the non-value adding wasteful activities and you get rid of them, there you go, you are effectively using the concept of Porter's value chain, and as a result the value system, to significantly enhance the value created in your business. This is what the value system means. That brings me to the discussion of external environment. Now, I must say that there are going to be additional tools that you learn as we go forward, especially in options, strategic options side and performance management side, where those tools also in tandem can be used to analyze your environment, understand your environment. But having said that, let's quickly take a look at some of the tools and some of the aspects that are important when you analyze your external business, not inside, not the resources, not your activities, but outside. So you can use Porter's diamond, where there are 4 aspects to things: the pestle framework, Porter's 5 forces, the life cycle analysis, and in general, obviously something that is quite generic, and as case study students, as business managers, as people who are doing business involved in the corporate sector, understanding that you're operating in a global market, global environment, and there are risks and benefits to it is critical. Then obviously the competitor analysis, again this is something that we will link to strategic options evaluation and strategic options generation. We are looking at a business through the competitor lens and identifying how competitors compete with us is one aspect we will pay attention to. So on that note, let's take a look at the key tools that are available for external environmental analysis. Firstly, you have Porter's diamond, which is a tool that is dedicated or committed or developed to identify the competitive advantage of a nation or a country. So being in one country, say especially if you are a large entity and you have the power and the money and the resolution to establish yourself in a different base of operations in a different country, this is one tool you can use to see which country should I go to. There are so many countries in the world, right? So in analyzing a competitive advantage of nations, you can use this. There are 4 aspects to things. Generally, you have the context for firm strategy and rivalry, the demand condition side to it, the related and supporting industry side to it, and the factor conditions or the factor input conditions. Now, under each of these 4, you can carefully go through some additional elements I've included so that you get a thorough understanding of, what do each of these conditions mean. Let me take one example. Under factor input conditions, you are looking at your specialized education and training capabilities. Can you establish university research in cluster related technologies? Will universities be friendly? Support cluster specific information gathering and enhance specialized infrastructure. Another quick example, let's take a look at maybe firm strategy and rivalry or managing competition. What are the barriers to local competition? Can you organize government departments in clusters and their support? Can you recruit their support? Can you attract foreign investments? And can you promote exports around these clusters that you decide to have? and to maintain. That is Porter's diamond, which analyzes the advantage of a nation. So it's a more country analysis tool. That brings me to the PESTEL framework, which is a macro environment analysis tool. So obviously under each of the words, these acronym, you have P for political, E for economic, S for social, T for technological, E for environmental, and L for legal. Under each of these, there are so many aspects when you are analyzing the macro environment to take into consideration. I'm going to take one example. Say under social growth, you have population growth, age distribution, or under the social factor, you have population growth, age distribution, health, consciousness, career attitudes, customer buying trends, cultural trends, demographics, industrial reviews and consumer confidence, and even organizational image. As opposed to under economic, you're looking at economic growth, interest rates, exchange rates, inflation, the disposable income levels of consumers, disposable income of the businesses, taxation, interstate taxes, any tax treaties, wage rates, financing capabilities, etc. Alright, so that is the PESTEL framework that you can use. So even if you're analyzing whatever pre-seen company that you get, and if you're analyzing that company, and if you want to understand the macro environment around that company, which the pre-seen usually goes into a reasonable amount of detail too, you can use, definitely you can use this tool, and when you're working with me, you get to use this tool as well. That brings me to the industry analysis. So we looked at country, then we looked at the macroeconomy. Now we are looking at the industry itself. So the best tool, something I'm quite fond of as well, and I think Porter was very smart to come up with this, it's quite logical, is the Porter's 5 forces within an industry. So Porter identified that to operate in an industry, there are 5 forces that compete with you or that affect you. What are these? Competitive rivalry or competition itself. Then in terms of power, bargaining power, you have the buyer to deal with, so buyer power, and the supplier power. And as threats, other forms of threats other than direct competition, you can have the threat of substitution, or you can have the threat of new entrants. Yeah, so these are the 5 forces that you take into consideration when you are analyzing the industry. Let's take a quick look at one of them. Right, so under competitive rivalry, what will you look at? You're looking at the number of competitors, quality differences, any other differences, switching cost, customer loyalty, etc. Maybe supplier bargaining power, number of suppliers, size of suppliers, uniqueness of service, and your ability to substitute, and the cost of changing. Now see, when you are analyzing an industry in terms of the Porter's 5 forces, once you identify a particular force, you have to basically determine how powerful that force is. Now in an industry where the number of suppliers are many, if there are many suppliers and the switching cost is very low, cost of changing is very low, it means that supplier bargaining power is low. The supplier doesn't have a lot of bargaining power with you. Right? That is what it simply means. So when you evaluate and when you apply the Porter's 5 forces, you're basically trying to gauge what level of power. Is it high power, low power, or moderate amount of power? To what extent do you think each of these forces are powerful? That extent also has to be usually extracted when you do a Porter's 5 forces analysis. That is industry analysis itself. And that brings me to the product life cycle, another very useful, wonderful tool that is quite self-explanatory as well. As you stay within as a company, as you enter an industry, as you grow old, or if you start manufacturing a product and if you put it to market, the product itself will usually go through these 4 stages. The introductory stage, there's obviously the development or the incubation time period, but then the introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. These are the 4 stages of the industry or the product life cycle. Now this is usually used as a tool to predict competitive conditions and identify key issues for management in corporate appraisals and strategic choices. It's an excellent tool. What are the key considerations? When you are using the product life cycle, you're basically trying to figure out, it's sort of like this portfolio management, right? You're looking at, if you have multiple products, you're trying to use the life cycle tool in a way that will tell you good strategies to deal with whatever the portfolio you have, and depending on which stage the product is going through. So you can look at offering a range of products at various stages, or maintaining a range of products at various stages of the life cycle. Mature products will fund the development of new products. Competencies need to change. At the early stages, creativity and innovation are key, while at later stages, efficiencies and low cost becomes important. Life cycles are difficult to predict and can change quickly and will vary from one product to another. Turning points are very hard to predict, so that is one aspect to be very careful of. Like for example, mobile phones, there used to be a time when you release a mobile phone to a market, it stays in the market for a very long time. I know that a long time ago, right? It seems like a long time ago, but probably around 15 20 years ago, the Nokia 3310 was a very popular mobile phone in the country, and I believe it, as far as a mobile phone is considered, it has had probably the longest life cycle, right? It stayed in the market for so long because of its endurance and durability, and it was a good one, right? So, but things are very hard to predict, as opposed to the even Apple iPhone. If you take the iPhone, every year they release one, every year. So one could say that the ideal life cycle of an Apple iPhone, which Apple deems relevant, is 1 year, right? Because they release the next product so soon, and they're doing it because there are so many customers who switch to the new one, or else they wouldn't be doing it. Yeah. So turning points are very hard to predict. Management anticipation of decline can cause decline itself, right? So reduction in investment and advertising can cause the appropriate market response. So it is, on one end, yes, customers' response that dictates terms, but also how you perceive your product. If you think that the product has lost value, that can also lead to things like you reducing investment and losing faith in the product, and therefore that can have been the supporting factor or the leading factor in why the product life cycle quickly declined. And the SWOT varies across the life cycle. Introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. At each of these stages, the SWOT elements, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat elements vary differently, right? They behave completely differently. These are the key considerations as far as using the life cycle is concerned. And ideally, because of all this, strategies will need to change as the organization progresses through the life cycle. So that's why I initially said this is sort of like a portfolio management tool, because if you have 10 products, you evaluate the products and you put them into each of the life cycle stage it belongs to, and then based on the stage it belongs to, you do a SWOT and you come up with various strategies that will be ideal to that product because it's in that stage of the life cycle. For example, if you have a mature product, what you're trying to do is you're trying to, as long as possible, lengthen the time it stays in maturity, because the longer it is in maturity, the more money it is making for you, right? So if you're in the introductory stage, you're trying to push the product as much as possible so that it grows, it falls into a growth trajectory, and therefore the ideal way you are looking at the product is how soon can I push this product so that it catches on with the customer, it becomes popular, and it starts growing at the rate I want it to grow. Therefore, I did want to give you a quick summary on how each of these things are looked at each product life cycle stage. So here in this table, we are looking at sales and the cost per customer, the profits, the customers, competitors, and objectives, which is why as an analysis tool, it's very useful, because the more accurate you classify a product into the relevant stage of the life cycle, the more accurate you can come up with various strategies that will ideally help the product stay in the market for as long as you need it to be, or you can make it to be, right? So take a look at this table very carefully. I will go through one example, say maturity. At maturity, sales will be at a peak level, cost per customer will be at the lowest ideally, or you're trying to keep it low. Profits will be very high. That's why you want a product to stay in maturity for as long as possible. Customers will be a middle majority. Competitors, stable number beginning to decline. And in terms of objectives, what you're trying to do is maximize profit while defending the market share. Yes. So that is a quick look at the industry or the product life cycle. That marks the end of the environmental analysis segment number 2 of E3 Essentials. I will see you soon. Thank you.